and welcome back to my channel. I have decided to restart this channel because I've been reading so many good books over the past few months, and I wanted to just drop in and share some of my thoughts in case it's helpful for any of you. So I wanted to start off by talking about this book that I just finished recently. It's called The Formidable Miss Cassidy. It came out in 2021 and it's by Meihan Boey, who is a Singaporean author. And it's actually the co-winner of the Epigram Books Fiction Prize, which is a local book prize. And I just wanted to hop on here and talk about how much I enjoyed reading this, because I thought it was really a breath of fresh air and a really cute story that easily drew me in. And so I would highly recommend checking this out. This book was just so fun to read, so I'll share with you a little bit about the premise and a few points on why I liked it. The book follows the central character, Miss Cassidy. It takes place around the turn of the century, so it's actually in 3 parts. And the first part takes place in 1895. And the main premise is that Miss Cassidy has come on a ship from Scotland to Singapore to be a governess for a young daughter. Her name is Sarah Jean Bendemeer, and her father and she have gone through a terrible family loss because both her mother and her other sisters have all passed away from a mysterious disease. And Miss Cassidy is coming to be a companion to Sarah Jane and to also teach her French and embroidery and take her on brisk walks around Singapore. So you follow Miss Cassidy's journey throughout the entire book, and it's essentially a novel about the various magical creatures and situations that she encounters. And one of the first things I love so much about this book is it does blend a lot of Southeast Asian and local Singaporean magic or creature or monster concepts with a bit of the broader like Western ghosts that we have. So in this book, you see Miss Cassidy come across a Pontianak, come across a toyol. She talks a lot about various traditions from the Chinese kind of superstitious beliefs, but as well as also like Indian and Malay. And I just have never seen that before. I've read a lot of Singaporean fiction, and I do feel like this is a nice blend of incorporating those local creatures and superstitions into kind of like a broader viewpoint, or what we are always taught in school, which is the Western canon, those kind of like myths. So I really like the marrying of kind of the more institutional or formal like ghosts and horror with a very local and kind of more colorful depiction of hantus. I think that's also another reason I love the character of Miss Cassidy so much. Is she's the kind of woman who is very indefatigable, who is really hardy and determined, but also very humble and aware of her station. There's definitely elements of class in the book that are just depicted as kind of the normal state of things. I feel like in general the tone of the book is kind of like a adventure story, very easy to digest, very simple characterizations, but at the same time, ones that are well researched. You know, you can tell when the author has done her homework because it needs to come out simply and you need it to be not overwrought, but you can still sense the difference as the reader, I think, between something that's simple because it's not researched and something that's simple because it's very well researched and then has been kind of distilled or condensed into a description. So in the 3 different parts of the novel, we follow these different adventures. The first is Miss Cassidy helping to rid the Bendemeer house of a Pontianak, which is like a blood-sucking woman who has been aggrieved and is trying to avenge something. She's kind of like a vampire, sort of, but not really, actually. The second story is about getting rid of a toyol, which is like a green monster that happens after a miscarriage and is blood-sucking. And then the third part is kind of a bit of a wrap up and talks about Miss Cassidy's life after going through all these escapades in Southeast Asia. And I just love her as a character. Maybe as an expat in Singapore, I just relate to her on some level, but she's definitely who I want to be, which is never grossed out by local food, very down to do anything, really appreciative of all the cultures around her. She goes to like a traditional Chinese clan wedding and she loves it. And she's just so willing to pick up treasures, both metaphorically and literally, from all of her travels and experiences. And she just completely drew me in, and I just loved her so much. I think the other characters were also engaging and fun to follow, but I am kind of glad we didn't stick with the same family the whole novel, and we did shift our perspective and actually move forward in a few years, because I think that kept it fresh. And I've read other kind of like around the turn of the century Singaporean fiction, like murder mysteries. For example, I'm thinking of Ovidia Yu's The Frangipani mystery, and that one just felt way heavier. Like, the thing I like about this is it's very light and very well done, and the action keeps moving. And I think that's partly due to the structure of having 3 parts. I also recognize that I am a bit of a sappy reader and film watcher, and some themes really resonate with me if they're done well. And I do feel like throughout the book, there is a bit of an application of modern values onto that time period. And so we have mixed race couples and kind of the challenges that they've faced in terms of being allowed to do certain things or what would be deemed appropriate alongside those decorum standards. There is an acknowledgement of like building up wealth, and also maybe the parts of living in upper class society that feel restrictive, but it's not too woke, which I really like. It just feels very natural for the modern reader. And then maybe the last thing I'll say about this book is you start to learn, or you start to realize, that Miss Cassidy might have powers of her own. And even her traditions of carrying certain items like iron or glass or various bits and bobs that she uses to either see the creatures or to ward them off. These are like slowly revealed and also come, I think, from a Scottish tradition, or maybe a broader like United Kingdom tradition, or maybe even more broadly just Europe or Western. But I love kind of Miss Cassidy's juxtaposition of her ways of witchcraft compared to like the bomoh that she goes to. And she even goes to the Tien Hock King. She goes to the Tien Hock King temple, as well as another Indian temple, I think, where she meets an Indian goddess or a Hindu goddess. And I just thought the marrying of all of these different creatures and gods was very delightful. Maybe if you are from Southeast Asia or Singapore, it might feel a bit like she's trying too hard to cover all her bases, but I love that kind of stuff. And I love that kind of representation. So it really worked for me. And I just read my first Neil Gaiman the other day with my book club. And we read The Ocean at the End of the Lane. And one of my favorite things about that book were the really strong female characters, witches almost, or creatures from the ancient beyond, or maybe the 3 fates even, who are so skilled and so wise, but also very practical. And I found that reflected in Miss Cassidy a lot, especially in the depiction of how she kind of problem solves and uses her magic. And then when I read in the acknowledgements, I noticed that Meihan had also thanked Neil Gaiman for having like kind of an influence on her writing style. So that's the first time I've ever noticed like writing influence. So I'm pretty tickled at that. She also says she wants to thank Charlotte Bronte for inspiration for this novel as well. So it does have that kind of vibe, like just a bit dreamy, but very practical, very strong central character with a very strong point of view who I absolutely fell in love with. I think that after reading a lot of dense and maybe not so well structured literature over the past few months, I can only describe this as a total breath of fresh air and something that was executed really well. Would be great for young adults, even teens. I think kids would love this, but I also found it really enjoyable, and I will give it a, let me check my Goodreads to see what I already rated it. Oh, wow. I actually rated it a 5. I think I was just in such a reading slump. The fact that this was a page turner to me is why I gave it such a high rating. And I wrote that I love the crossover in Southeast Asian and Western gods and superstitions, but I was glad the emphasis was mainly on bomohs, Pontianaks, and toyls because they comprise such a vivid scene of Singapore during that time period. Yeah, I think there was a really strong feeling of place and time. And what do I know? People weren't like running around the streets going to their bomohs every day back then, but I do feel like that is a part of the olden days that is really lost now, and now we just have misinformation and cults and just total lack of analytical skills, whereas back then, at least if we were suspending logic, it was for these like scary creatures, or we put our belief or our trust into these various like acts or things that you could do. It just seems like more fun. Yeah, and to that point about depicting class or depicting modern day values on a previous time period, I also really liked the description of a Singaporean Chinese household with both daughters-in-law living in the house. So there's the patriarch, who Miss Cassidy may or may not have a little crush on. I mean, he definitely likes her because she's so practical and is a problem solver, and he finds her very interesting. But I think the depiction of how the two older daughter-in-laws have to run the household is both, like, it's a very understanding depiction. I think it views it with the eyes of the modern day reader who thinks, wow, this doesn't seem fair, because she does talk about foot binding and maybe other restrictions that a very traditional Singaporean Chinese family may put on the women in the family, but she doesn't just deprive them of joy. Like, they have joy, they have wonderful relationships. The eldest daughter-in-law takes pride in her work, and she's called even, I think, in the book, like the general manager of the house. And so I just really like that very human portrayal of actually the power and the pride that she took in running the household, because I think a lot of feminists that grew up when I did kind of balk at that as something being anti-feminist and just being stuck in the kitchen and being given all these menial tasks. But I think Meihan does a good job of showing how that was actually a role full of respect, and where if you are good at it and that is indeed what you want to do, I mean, choice is the big issue, you can be very happy and you can really contribute to your family. Okay, I'll stop there, but please like or subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'm going to be doing a lot of one-off reviews of books that I've read, but I also have some series that I've completed where I'm going to do a bit of a comparison of all the different books in the series, and I'm hoping to post maybe one a week for the next few weeks, so make sure to check that out. And thank you so much for watching if you made it this far. If you made it this far, please comment down below your favorite Singaporean or Southeast Asian creature, monster, or superstition. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.